Hello and welcome to the Flourishing Introvert Talks with me, Jo Rawbone. This is the podcast that celebrates the natural gifts of introverts so that we can flourish in all situations. Episode 332. Mind the perception gap. If you've listened to recent episodes about respect and trust, you might have had a hunch about where I'm heading next. People have opinions about us, quite often based on hearsay rather than actual experience. So for anyone who is looking to further their career or improve an important relationship, perception does matter. Because someone's perception is basically their reality, whether factually accurate or not. So guess what? They use it as evidence, and of course it may not match your reality. In my case, it's this mismatch that can still get me barreling down rabbit holes, defending my reality if I'm not careful, and in my experience, that's rarely, if ever, helpful. Let me give you an example. One of my cousins, Sandra, let slip after a few sherbets at a party that she'd always thought I was stuck up, thinking myself better than her and the rest of the family. Interesting. Her reason for this conclusion was that I didn't go to many of the big extended family gatherings. Her observation about my lack of appearances was correct, but the conclusion she drew was not. So what did I do? In this particular instance, I laughed. I didn't get defensive, I didn't explain, and I managed to steer well clear of those darned rabbit holes. And there were other family influences at force here, which I won't go into now, but which meant that there would have been no point doing anything other than laughing. You see, in the big scheme of things, it didn't matter that much to me. What a cousin, who I may see once every 4 years, thinks of me is frankly irrelevant. In this instance, I was able to demonstrate Byron Katie's assertion that what others think of me is none of my business. I was taken with her work when I came across it during my master's, and I got to see her live in London many years ago. She's not entirely uncontroversial, but then neither am I. Now, I accept that it's a whole different ball game in the workplace when laughing or brushing it off won't achieve the desired result. So in this episode, I plan to offer you some strategies to deploy in the workplace when what people think of you does matter. Let's start with some grounding so we're on the same page as we begin to unpick the problem. Reality is what I know to be true about me. This includes my values, my intentions, my capabilities, etc. Perception, on the other hand, is what others believe to be true based on whatever they have gathered from their senses, including what's been told to them from a variety of sources. Let's be clear, though. Introverts are harder to read than the average bear, so we may need to be more intentional about what we share. And here's why. Over time, when this perception is shared often enough or generates sufficient weight and momentum, it becomes our reputation. And as I've always said, our reputation always precedes us, so we really can't escape it. Just think about how misunderstood our personality type still is and how our behaviours can be misread. Quiet becomes disengaged. Succinct becomes abrupt, calm becomes disinterested, thoughtful becomes indecisive, and as I found out, discerning becomes stuck up. These days, the world is a scarily small place. I remember talking about how the time-space continuum was shrinking or being compressed when I was studying social psychology, and that was back in the 1980s. Just think about how much technology has advanced since then, making us truly a global village these days. So if you have ambitions of any sort, not just within your current organisation, understanding how you are perceived and managing your reputation become crucial. And from the clients I work with, neither of these things fill them with joy, but it has to be done if you have aspirations. If not, crack on as you are. Let's follow the Byron Katie thread a little more now, because one of her key concepts is about being clear whose business you are in, and it's very relevant here. She talks about 3 kinds of business: my business, your business, and God's business, meaning bigger than all of us. She goes on to say the only business we have any right being in is our own, and that we create undue stress for ourselves when we're mentally in other people's business. So this is at the heart of her "what others think of me is none of my business" assertion. Makes total sense to me. So in my opinion, here's what's true in workplace settings. What peers, colleagues and leaders think of me is their business. We all see things through our own lens, after all. What I understand of that, make it mean and do about it is my business. To use another of Katie's concepts, I care, but I don't mind. I notice that I always shudder a little when people say I don't care, because it seems very heartless and just a little defensive to me. And looking at the state of the world right now, I can't help wondering if rather too many don't care. My view is that in the workplace, and in life actually, we need to care, but would do well to not mind about it so we don't add to our stress load. In fact, what a beautifully simple idea that is, because to not mind is to not allow our minds to be occupied by other people's business. Links rather nicely to Viktor Frankl's concept of control and influence, which I talk of often in these episodes. This then is a useful mantra. Other people's opinions are not my identity, but their perceptions may provide useful data. Taking this further, in essence, we're talking about coming across as you intend. If I'm looking for a promotion or taking the step from senior manager to C-suite, what people think of me will play a huge part in how that journey goes. If their perception of me is not positive, I may not even get past stage 1. And it's important to be on guard for the unfounded limiting beliefs. Once we notice beliefs like, they think I'm not leadership material, and the emotion around that belief, it's time to ask the 4 questions that form the core of what Katie calls the work. She refers to these as her liberating questions, and they really are liberating. Not necessarily easy, but truly freeing. Number 1, is it true? Number 2, can you absolutely know that it's true? Number 3, how do you react when you believe that thought? Number 4, who would you be without the thought? Let's unpack these a little. Is it true that people think you're not leadership material? Have you been told that specifically? Or is it the conclusion you've drawn based on what you've made things mean? It gets interesting when I think of how I react when I believe that thought. There are times when I have shrunk, avoiding taking risks or seizing opportunities. There are times when I have become mardy and metaphorically taken my ball away. And there are times when I got defensive and belligerent, thinking I was showing them what I was made of. Well, I was, sadly, and it didn't serve me well. So what's possible? Who could I be without that thought? I could be more my natural self, steadier, clearer, calmer, less desperate to prove and therefore more able to demonstrate my quiet leadership in all of its glory. This gets me to acknowledge that the truth is maybe, just maybe, I was thinking that I'm not leadership material. I might even have done a great job of convincing myself that it's a truth. I realise that's a tough one to face, and there are probably a myriad of justifications I could provide. That belief could conveniently be a get-out clause, a fear-based excuse, or derived from a lack of confidence. None of these are comfortable in any shape or form, and yet seeing them for what they are is the most empowering thing to do. And when we choose to empower ourselves rather than waiting around expecting someone else to do it for us, we are truly beginning to be accountable for ourselves, which lays the groundwork for taking responsibility for our actions and caring about the impact we are having. What that groundwork has enabled in me is to not be careless about my impact, whilst accepting that I cannot be responsible for every opinion of me. I don't have the time or the will for that matter. That feels like agency around perception to me, because what I consistently communicate, withhold, signal or clarify is absolutely my business. Heidi Grant Halvorson, in her book No One Understands You and What to Do About It, posits that we all perceive each other through 3 lenses. The trust lens. Can I rely on you? I recommend you revisit the previous episode for more on this. The power lens. Do I need to pay attention to you? If you're looking for a promotion or to stop being overlooked and undervalued, I suggest you focus your attention on this lens. A client of mine realised that this lens was focused on them recently and therefore had some tough decisions to make. She had to make it abundantly clear that she was the authority on a particular aspect of her work when others, who knew far less, were trying to use spin to outrank her. It's not her natural style, but her knowledge, skills and competence enabled her to claim her place at the table without embarrassing any of the pretenders. Because this can be about asserting your relevance, here are a couple of things that may help. Rather than shying away from the power play, articulate your contribution in ways that align with their priorities. Demonstrate strategic decision-making based on solid ground, and hold yourself and others accountable. Those 3 often work like a treat. And the third lens is the ego lens. Do you threaten my status or identity? This is typically far trickier, as it's about being neither sycophantic nor subservient. So, demonstrate appropriate humility, ensure your competence is useful, not comparative, and signal respect explicitly. What I've found is that when I take the time to get to know those in power a little better, the lens they often prefer to look through becomes obvious. This enables me to choose the necessary action, my approach, and the language that is more likely to resonate with them. This sits at the heart of influencing, which is a skill all great leaders need. By focusing on Katie's 4 liberating questions, when we realise that we need to rattle the cage of potential perception we're caught in, helps us to see the way out. And thinking about the lens that matters most to the person you're dealing with provides a key. That's when it's time to demonstrate that quiet leadership we're famed for. Time to showcase our skills rather than show them off recklessly or wave them in people's faces just for the sake of it. And it's time to stop playing small, hiding or making excuses. Leaders and decision makers are busy, and in this fast-paced world, they struggle to make the time to understand any of us accurately, especially we more guarded introverts. So, we have to meet those busy leaders more than halfway. And I see that as a good thing, as I'm more in the driving seat and not avoiding my own power. My final thought is this. Maybe perception is only a problem if we worship it or ignore it. When you make it your business to find out how you're perceived with the right intention and then decide how to turn that data into useful information, the crucial perception gap is minimized, and that will serve you well. If you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, then please subscribe, rate us and leave a comment, because we know that helps other people find the podcast. And if other people find us, other introverts can flourish.
You are listening to an Intentional Media Production podcast.